Hey friends, it's Abigail Luvisi. Welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. We need vulnerability and empathy now more than ever. I hope you are able to find room for more curiosity, self-compassion, and empathy for yourself and others while you're here. I show up so you can too. Welcome back, Judgment Free Zone. I am so excited. I have Catherine here, and we are going to be talking a lot about narcissism, and it's a topic that is super near and dear to my heart and with hers. And so I'm just going to open up and kind of share a little bit about her, and then she's going to go into sharing more about her story too with us. Sound good, Kat?
Yeah, sounds great.
Great. So Kat grew up in an abusive home. After leaving home at 18, she found herself in an abusive relationship that lasted years. Years after leaving her first abusive relationship, she found herself in a second one. Noticing this pattern in her life helped her to notice a pattern in herself. Entering a self-discovery journey to find her power has been the greatest gift she's given herself. Kat created a TikTok account to help survivors of mental abuse and brainwashing to see the tactics of manipulation so they could start fighting back. Kat studied psychology in college, and it is her greatest passion. Kat said, what she has learned has changed her life, and I believe it can change others as well. Growing up in an abusive home left me with an enormous passion and place in my heart for victims of abuse. Kat is a coach, helping others take their freedom and liberate themselves from the cycles is what drives her. This is the issue in the world Kat takes most personally. Today, she works with survivors of narcissistic abuse to heal, find freedom, and ultimately find themselves again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
awesome.
me.
That's so good. I'm already so excited to hear more about your story and what you've gone through. And I personally appreciate so much what you're doing because I've also lived it. And that's what we were kind of starting to chat before, guys. And I was like, okay, we're getting vulnerable already. Let's just dive in. I can't remember what we were kind of talking about, but I kind of want to back up to what we were saying.
Yeah, we were just saying that this was you kind of just started this podcast. You just started talking about it and becoming vulnerable about it.
Yes. So I was sharing that, I grew up with narcissism my whole life too. I was the scapegoat child when in my family dynamic. And then I went into an abusive narcissistic relationship when I was married previously. And I just opened up my platform in November. And it's been really scary because you don't know where the line is on talking shit and but telling the truth.
Yeah.
But it's not even because I'm talking shit. That's where the crazy making begins. I'm not, you know what I mean? I feel that way because of what's happened in my past.
Yeah, the gaslighting.
Exactly. Yep. Right. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about your story and your narcissistic background and how, when you said in there that you noticed the pattern, how hard was it to see that pattern?
Yeah. So, my story is very similar to yours. I grew up in a narcissistic home, an abusive home, and it's I wasn't always the scapegoat. There was a lot of interchanging, but just in general, the girls were the scapegoats compared to the boys in my family. So us girls were treated worse, but of the girls, I was a golden child. So it just created a lot of, I think, self-image issues and identity issues, who am I and what am I worth? Who am I supposed to be? Kind of developed a people-pleasing personality to appease the people around me, I guess. And then I ended up in an abusive relationship as a teenager, like you said, and introduced me as, and then it went on. So when I found myself in the second abusive relationship, that's where it's okay, this is a pattern. And the reason that clicked for me was because I had heard a video once of a therapist talking that we seek what's familiar. Right. She said that because of the relationship that she had developed as a child with her parents, she was finding herself developing similar relationships romantic relationships and things like that, right? And this is basic psychology, which I know now, but of course you don't know that at the time, you know? So I think hearing how if you're used to being treated badly, how uncomfortable it can be to have healthy love, how we kind of reject that and we confuse what's familiar as what's comfortable, and it's not comfortable, right? Abuse is not comfortable, it's familiar.
Yeah.
That just left me open-minded. So when I went and saw these patterns, I was like, okay, this is a pattern. This is a cycle. And ultimately, I was just so sick of what was happening in my life. And I realized that I was the common denominator. You know, I am making choices here, and some of them are bad, and I don't want to acknowledge them.
Yeah.
But when I started to acknowledge the bad choices I was making and really trying to find ownership in how I was ending up in these places, I had to be honest, you know, you're codependent. You don't want to be alone and wait for someone. You don't want to do the work to like grow and do all these things. Like you just don't want to be alone right now. Right. So I had to like really just look inward and change myself. And then my environment changed.
Yeah. 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 No, I can totally relate to that. You know, I don't know if you were the one to leave the relationship or not. For myself, I was not the one who left. So he finally filed for a divorce that he had threatened a bajillion times. Yeah. And we were in a group therapy for sex addicts. And he, one of the times we sat in therapy, I kid you not, I'm going off on a tangent now. We were sitting in therapy with his therapist, my therapist, and both of us. And we left that office and he looked at me when they said that he was a narcissist. Like they finally like clinically said, like, you're a narcissist. We walked out and he said, can you believe they said you're a narcissist? I was like, what? I'm sorry, what? I'm not kidding. But because I was so messed up, I went to my therapist. I'm not even joking. It was
like, you said it was him, right? You said it was him, right?
Yeah. Months. It was months that I finally was like, no, like, okay, like you were there. I had to hear it from my therapist week after week after week that she said that no, he's the therapist or he's the narcissist. Oh man. Yeah.
It's wild because it will make you feel like you want to pull your hair out. Cause I always tell people, if you feel like you wish you had a recorder with you at all times, or you wish your conversations were being recorded, that's a big indicator that somebody's messing with your memories. Yeah. You know? And so to have someone be like, oh no, they said you were the narcissist. I think it puts us in a position where it's like, do you believe what you're saying? Did I mishear? Or are you just a liar? It's hard to believe that they would just blatantly lie, but they are lying.
Yeah. And they just do it. They don't, there's nothing there. They don't care.
No remorse.
No remorse. And it still goes on. And man, if have kids with somebody that is a narcissist, it continues. So yeah, it can be really hard. And the thing
about like, they're not only do they not have remorse, it's the opposite. They get joy. Like it pleasures them to hurt people.
Yeah. And it's just so like sad to think that they're literally people in the world, even though I'm dealing with them. You know what I mean? Like we deal with them.
Yeah, we all do. There are so many more than anyone actually really wants to believe, that it's hard to find a person that hasn't encountered them in their family, in their relationships, or at least in their workplace.
Yeah. So with that, why don't you tell me exactly what narcissism is for our guests? And then if you wouldn't mind telling us, because we do all have narcissistic tendencies, but what is the difference between having narcissism, NPD, and just having a tendency?
Yeah. So narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder in which there are like 9 different categorizations, and you have to have at least 5 of them to have narcissistic personality disorder. And of course, it has to be diagnosed by a psychologist. But essentially, a narcissist is going to be somebody with a really, really fragile ego. So they blame shift a lot. They have a victim mindset. It's not them. They have control issues. They're extremely exploitive. They're manipulative. They're very, very self-fulfilling, self-absorbed. They need excessive admiration. They have extreme entitlement, and they lack empathy. So if they have it, 5 or more of those things, that's a narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
Narcissistic tendencies is we all have an ego. So I like to think of it as, if you're letting your pride get in the way of a relationship or a conversation, like we all have the ability to blame shift sometimes, or if
or even
we're
gaslight ourselves.
Totally.
Right.
Like we unknowingly gaslight each other all the
Right.
time,
Mhm.
but that's very different than an intentional method of getting someone to believe that they're crazy.
Yeah.
If I'm just like not wanting to see my fault in a situation, like your feelings, and I do some blame shift, or I have a little bit of a victim mindset. Okay. We all do that. It's not an excuse. It's still
Right.
toxic behavior. It's still unacceptable, but a lot of it comes down to the humanity of it. Most people still have empathy. Most people, even if they're a little selfish, sometimes they don't get like a sick joy and pleasure from hurting others. They have remorse, they have compassion. It like makes them sick, even if they can be selfish sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it could be obviously difficult to even get diagnosed as that, because I mean, I know you went to school for psychology. My awareness is that they have to actually go in willing already to be able to be diagnosed. And most people, I mean, I know for me, when I'm sitting down and talking to somebody, it can be hard to be vulnerable as it is, especially talking about my past with my kids. Like when I'm talking to doctors and I want them to get the best help, like it's already, that pressure is already on. And then for somebody to go in and be like, oh yeah, I like it when I do this to somebody, like
They're
not
going to
gonna
admit
happen very
that.
often.
Yeah. No.
Exactly.
They don't even want to admit it to you or to like anyone in the neighborhood. They're willingly going to walk into the psychologist's office and be like, so,
Right. So I get that it's hard to get people or themselves diagnosed with that understanding. I just think, and let me know what your opinion is too. I think somebody who's lived it, it can definitely be overused. And I think that there's this weird balance for somebody who has been in narcissistic abusive relationships, when people are, I mean, it's a big word right now, you know what I mean? And then you have this side of where people don't believe you, but then it's being used all the time. And there's this balance where it's like, I'm really glad we're talking about it. I'm really glad that people are starting to see it. But like, then there's these two worlds of like, well, it's not really happening on a lot of people. And then a lot of people still don't believe, or nothing's changing. Do you get what I'm saying? That in between?
Oh, I do. It's really hard to empathize with something you haven't been through,
Yeah.
I kind of want to use this as an example just because it was recent and it made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
A man that I know found himself in a vulnerable situation where he was being taken advantage by another man. But the man that I know is heterosexual and he wasn't interested, but he was actually kind of scared. He'd never been in this position. This man was like really, really not taking no for an answer, just kind of pesting him, blah, blah, blah. And this man that I know didn't quite understand not that he didn't understand Me Too, but I don't think he understood how actually horrifying it is to be in a situation like that until he was in a situation like that. And I was like, oh yeah, me and every single one of my friends have been through this. I think every woman I've ever talked to has been in a situation where the guy wouldn't take no, and you have to be mean. I think narcissistic abuse is really similar to that. You just don't really know. You're like, okay, well, maybe abuse is kind of a strong word. They hurt your feelings, Okay, so he's selfish. We don't need to diagnose everyone. But when you've lived through it, when you've looked a psychopath in the eyes and seen that they get pleasure by the most disturbing and evil things, you don't forget. You just you don't unknow that.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say, I don't think you're being mean. I think that's having a strict, hard boundary. And there's nothing mean about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's maybe just like an internalized belief because of society that like, if you say no, you're a bitch, or if you fight back, right? And Like, thank you
Yeah.
for correcting that. Cause you're right. That wasn't being mean. That was
No.
holding a boundary.
Yeah, exactly. And I think again, that's just such a thing that
Mm.
if it's, I tell my kids all the time that a boundary is something that you can control. You know,
Yeah.
if you're putting that line there, like whatever else happens is on them, and you might have to shift if it's not something you want, but that's not being mean, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gets us into some of these narcissistic, well, it is what gets us into these narcissistic abusive relationships, is because of that codependency. We're constantly seeking for someone to
Mhm.
tell us our self-worth. And
Right.
of course we think we're being mean when we set a boundary. Like, I'm struggling with it on the daily right now. I am like learning so hard. Like, I did not realize how much of a martyr I had in me. Like, it's coming out hot right now. Like with my kids, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I'll put a boundary out with my kids and then they cry, and I feel like the worst mom in the world. And I didn't even do anything.
I know. I
So
know.
so it is difficult when you have lived that life and been in those abusive relationships, and you're
Mhm.
constantly questioning what you're doing, and it takes years of
Years.
hard work to overcome.
Yeah. And I think the other hard part about this divide with like narcissistic abuse is being talked about, but then also it's being overshared, right? I think the problem there, the other hard part is that narcissistic abuse itself is extremely invalidating. So when you come out into the world with this information and people are invalidating it, it is re-traumatizing. Like, well, you just call everyone a narcissist. Oh, we have another psych major, things like that. And it's like, I didn't need to get a degree in psychology to say that that was abuse.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
still was.
Yeah.
It still is, even if you don't see it,
Right. Well, even if like you want to take narcissism out, like it's abuse.
It's just
And
abuse.
right.
Yeah.
And I think that there's that line too that's so difficult right now of not seeing like the mental and emotional abuse that goes on in our world. You have to see, marks.
Mhm,
And that can
mhm.
be so hard too.
Yeah.
Even dealing with we've had situations unfortunately with our kids where there have been family members that have knocked kids upside the head and stuff, and
Mhm.
DCS
Yeah.
and stuff will be like, oh no, if it's blood related and there's no marks, it's okay. Like
Still,
our system is so messed up. I mean,
that's really,
I don't know what state you're in, but we're in Arizona. So
yeah, I'm in Minnesota.
yeah, so it can be, I mean, we're like in the wild, wild west right now. Like, it's
I
crazy out
guess.
there. Oh man. So why do you think like people don't listen when you say it? I had, I mean, I know I'll share a story and you can kind of go into it too, but I would tell family members, what was going on, and nobody, like, I've had to make major boundaries myself. I don't talk with my family. I have family members who still hang out with my ex, like
Mm,
to this day.
mm,
So, like, you know what I mean? Like, what,
I do.
you know,
I do.
what would you say to people who are like, why does that happen in those relationships?
Well, I think that it could happen for a couple of reasons. One reason I think that the abuse is this type of abuse is really subtle and hidden, and it's death by, like, I've heard it described as death by 1,000 cuts. It's not just like one horrendous thing. It's constant little subtle invalidation and manipulation tactics. And we could go into like all the different terms, but they have ways to abuse you in public, in front of people, where the comment that they made is just totally normal to anyone else in the room. But to you, it's really a personal dig. It's like a big F you, you
Yeah.
know? And they have ways to do that in front of other people. So while you're constantly being abused, everyone else just sees someone that's really nice and complimenting you,
Yeah.
like they could have just put down your outfit and shamed you for what you were wearing so that you changed. And then you go in public and doesn't she look great tonight?
Yeah.
Doesn't she look great? It
Yeah.
is such a slap in the face, but everyone else just sees your partner complimenting you and treating you well.
Yeah.
So I think that's one reason a lot of people don't believe. But I think another reason, like in your situation, it sounds like toxic hangs out with toxic,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
it's just it gets to a point where you're like, okay, the healthy people that are going to listen to me, that really matter, that are my friends and family, that value me, will be there for me, you
Yeah.
know, and the other ones will turn a blind eye because maybe they're unhealthy themselves,
Oh yeah.
or the truth will present itself and then they'll come back with their tail between their legs and say, I'm sorry, I didn't believe you, or whatever it is, but it's really not our problem. It's like the boundary.
Yeah.
After this, it's on you.
Yeah. And it can be so difficult. And you obviously do it. You hear all the stories, I'm sure. But even in my own life, I know a few people who are going through these divorces and, dealing with it as well. And somebody specific who I can relate a lot to, like that story specifically. So that's why I wanted to speak to it a little bit for them, because I know they'll listen.
Yeah.
But oh man, it's hard. It's difficult. So again, just I'm sorry you've gone through it too.
I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry you have.
Yeah, it's no fun, man.
No.
It's no fun. So why do you feel so crazy? We've commented on, we could
Yeah.
sit here for hours talking about it, gaslighting, arguing,
Mhm,
love
mhm.
bombing, brainwashing,
Yeah.
isolation, codependency, the supply, the covert narc, like
Mhm,
wherever you
mhm.
want to go,
Yeah,
you tell us.
sure. I think that you feel so crazy because you have somebody with a mission to make you feel crazy, but a mission to misunderstand and invalidate every single thing you say. So when you come to them, like your ex-husband, when they said he's the narcissist, they come out and say, "Can you believe they called you a narcissist?" How insane. You can't make it up. They
No.
just, it's outrageous, and it's all day, every day. And you really are like, does this person, are they delusional? Are they pathological? Am I totally bad? Like, is it me?
Right.
Because how did you
Yeah.
just hear that? And they'll
Right.
just say the most absurd things. Like
Right.
my dad, for example, he's a narcissist. Um, he was still, it's so outrageous. My brother is not my mom's son,
Okay.
but he's been in the family since we were 4, and we're 30 now. Okay. So she's like raised him, like he's
Right.
whatever. He'll still go over there to like drive around. Sometimes my other brothers take her car and stuff, and he helps out a lot. He's family. And my dad's like, you're sleeping with her. It's just outrageous. You're like, we all just want to pull our hair out all the time. Like, do you believe the things you say, or
And they
are you just
do.
bored today? Or like, why?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. What 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 would you give somebody to start seeing maybe some signs other than, like the recording that I heard you say, like when
Mhm.
you start to feel like, what are some things that you feel like are big red flags for people to look for?
Yeah. So definitely, like I said earlier, if you feel like you've ever thought like, oh my gosh, I wish we recorded our conversations, that's a big red flag. But I think a good habit to get into is, if you're starting to notice that kind of pattern going on, is to journal, because what we have cognitive dissonance, and our mind does all this trickery, and we minimize the abuse, and we idealize the potential, and we want things to be good. And maybe it was me, maybe I was being sensitive, maybe I was overreacting, or whatever it is. So I think keeping a journal is really important for a couple reasons. One, you can reflect back and be like, oh, I'm not minimizing. That was really atrocious. But two, when you're constantly being abused and then nothing happens for like 2 days, you feel like, oh my gosh, we've been good for a while. No, things have really, really been good for a while. And I'll ask people like, well, what's a while? And they're like, I guess it's been 4 days, So when you look back in your journal after, like, say you only write in the times there's abuse or fights or gaslighting, and you go back and you're like, oh, so we fought on the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 12th, 14th. You're like, oh, okay, we fought 24 out of 30 days that month. So maybe it really wasn't good for that long.
Yeah. Well, and the love bombing can be so confusing too.
Yeah.
Like that in between of
They just put you on this pedestal, and then they just idealize you, and then there you are, because your worth is all coming from this person's mouth.
Yeah.
So when they're giving it to you, it feels like, oh, okay, things are good again. And they've been good for a while.
Yeah.
But it's just not.
Yeah. So I've been really enjoying your most recent reels on the father to the daughter.
Oh,
It
yes.
stresses me out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then just hearing you talk about your dad too. Yeah, man, like watching that and then seeing my, because I have three girls, like
Mhm.
seeing that play out, is so difficult. So
Oh,
difficult. So
yeah.
I really do appreciate everything you're putting out there, man. Like you put out some amazing things for
Mhm.
people. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, of
What does it
course.
look like working with you for people who are going through
Mm.
this and are curious about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically we spend the first session where I just kind of listen and figure out, I want to hear about your story, what happened and where you are exactly right now. But more importantly, I want to hear where you want to be, whether that's like I'm co-parenting and it's not, I need to not be having to do this or whatever, like the boundary here, whether it's getting out of the relationship or you want to discover yourself. Where are you now and where do you want to be? And then what are the barriers keeping you to where you want to be? And how can we come up with a game plan where I can help you help yourself get there? Because
Yeah.
I'm very much in the business that I'm never going to give you the fish. Like I'm here to teach you how to fish because I believe in liberation. And I think the best part about my journey was taking my own life and taking my own freedom. And so that's what I'm in the business of.
Yep. Same. I agree. You can, you know what I mean? You could do it for somebody, but unless they really want it, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
And it
Yeah.
won't feel as good. It won't feel
Yeah.
as good unless you do it for yourself.
Yeah, that boundary piece too, like that's what I really work on with my clients is setting up boundaries. For
Mm.
me, that's where I believe my ex-husband filed for divorce is I had
Mhm.
never been taught boundaries and I started
Mhm.
setting up these boundaries to protect myself and it was like the only thing they could dangle in front of me anymore was divorce. And
Mhm.
I will tell anybody that I think that that's what created my divorce, which I'm super thankful for because I
Right.
was too, blind to see what was happening. But
Mhm.
boundaries are so important.
They're the most important. I love boundary work.
Yeah, me
I
too.
I didn't have boundaries until mid-20s. Therapist helped
Same.
me learn how to set them and my life changed forever.
Same.
Mhm.
Literally changed my life forever. So, what do you want people to walk away with?
Yeah, yeah. I think I would like people to walk away with mostly just an open mind that if you're feeling confused and you're not really sure what's going on in your relationship, whether it's romantic or friendship or whatever, that just look into this information because it's everywhere now. You can go on TikTok,
Yeah.
YouTube, you can Google emotional abuse, learn about gaslighting, learn about straw manning, all of these tactics that they're using, and just arm yourself. I also think I would really like people to walk away with, like, let's forget about the narcissistic personality disorder def term, and let's just focus on toxic. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people get held up on, oh, I don't know if they're really a narcissist. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is still abusive behavior.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that
But
goes back to the beginning. It's not
yeah,
narcissism, it's abuse. If you have these things, even if it's one of them that you were saying out of the 10,
one.
then
Yeah.
question it. Start doing what you said, journal, see that one
Mhm.
thing. How often is it happening?
Yeah. And I think also don't feel guilty. Like that's something that happens where all of a sudden you feel like you have to sacrifice yourself for them, but they're not doing it back, right? So don't feel guilty for setting boundaries and leaving and doing what you need to do for you.
Yeah. And I could just say and like give empathy to people out there that that part is super hard. That boundary work, like I was saying, is
Mhm.
difficult because that is when you let people walk over your boundaries, like it's showing how much you don't respect yourself. And
Mhm.
it's hard work. And you just have to keep going, reaching out, having self compassion for yourself. That's
Yeah.
what's going to keep getting you there. Just
Yeah.
a
It is
little at
A
time.
marathon. Yeah, just a
Mhm.
little at a time. You don't need to wake up tomorrow and be the person you want to be. You just have to walk in that direction every day.
Yeah. And you're
That's it.
gonna fuck up.
A lot.
Yeah.
And you're gonna fall backwards.
Uh-huh.
And you're gonna get
Yes.
back up and you're gonna keep
Yep.
going.
Yep. I can't even tell you how many times I've been doing like hardcore therapy work for like 7 years now. And I yelled at my kids like 2 days ago, like, you have self-compassion. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
know. I
it's-
know.
you're doing the hard work though, like for yourself, for your kids if you have kids, for our world, honestly.
For our world, really.
Really.
Yeah.
Really.
If everyone would just look inside and focus on themselves, our world would be a better place.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we have so much more in common than we don't. And
I
we
know.
just need to connect. That's why I love this podcast, is because I don't even know you, but there's something you and I can relate about. And
Mhm.
there's, the little bits that I have heard about your story. I'm like, I want to know more, because
Yeah.
we connect and I can have empathy for your situation.
Mhm.
There's so many other people, so many more that can relate to us, even on a small, minuscule level.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I love what you're doing here. And I love that you're
Thanks.
raising awareness and that you're focusing on connection because it matters a
Yeah.
lot.
No, I agree. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Okay. Yeah. I have a website. It's standcoaching.com. I'm on TikTok, Stand Coaching. I'm on Instagram with Stand Coaching.
Yes. Are you working on anything fun right now?
Yeah, I am. Well, I do want to get my own YouTube and podcast off the ground. I've been
Yay.
dragging my feet a little bit. So it's all part of, it's just the consistency, right? It's the
Oh, man.
marathon. So I'm
know.
not done,
Yeah.
even if I drag my feet sometimes.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait for you to have a podcast.
Thank you. Yeah.
Your
I've
few
been putting it
minutes,
off for a while.
those few seconds and minutes on Reels is not enough for us to hear from you. We need to
Okay,
hear more
I'll
from
do
you.
it.
Yes,
Yeah, I'll
do it. If you need help or need any questions, because I've been winging it myself. So you got this.
No, I will. I'm
If
gonna
I
reach
can
out
do
to
it, you can do it. Okay, I promise.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your story with us. Thank you so much for coming on and helping raise awareness. And I can't wait to hear more from you and hopefully have you back on in the future. This is a topic
love
I'm
that.
super passionate about, and I just appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you. I
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
All right, friends, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks, friends, for listening in. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. If you'd like to be more involved in our community, hop over to Instagram and find me at Abigail Luvisi. Keep showing up. I will too. See you next time.